All right, guys, welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are in our preview and prediction for a big rivalry game going down in Los Angeles. USC hosting Notre Dame, looking to lock up a college football playoff berth this Saturday as 7-point favorites. 50.5 is the total. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Getting things started with this Notre Dame offense. This is a team we just talked about a week ago, and the script is pretty much the same. I expected a blowout win over Army. They were able to accomplish that. Riley Leonard, this is a guy who's really found, much better balance in this passing attack really over the last, 2 months. Their ceiling isn't incredibly high in terms of yardage, but that's not the style of offense. 176 yards per game, 14 touchdowns, and 4 picks. This is a guy who I don't think's all that talented as a passer, but he's a veteran quarterback that protects the ball, runs this scheme very well, and I think Mike Denbrock's done a great job of tailoring it around his skill set. Some of the receivers they have, I think this is an incredibly deep receiving group, and if Sam Hartman was here for another year, you'd see an abundance of production. 8 different guys have double-figure receptions. Chris Mitchell, Jaden Thomas are at the bottom of that list. Those are 2 very good ones. Mitchell himself is. Jordan Fajon's really emerged as of late. Jaden Harrison, Jaden Greathouse, and Bo Collins is the leader. Transfer from Clemson, has the most recs and yards. And, of course, Mitchell Evans is a nice tight end. This is a passing attack, Nick, that, again, it's not in their style. They're going to throw the ball maybe 20, 25 times in most games. If they have high efficiency, you'll see it more than that, as you have on occasion. But they don't put the ball in harm's way too much. They love to utilize their tight end in the middle of the field. A lot of stuff out wide. And, of course, play action is very impressive. So you're not going to see 350 yards by any means, but the efficiency and the protection of the ball is what makes Notre Dame so special.
I think you make a very fair point there. I think this past weekend's game against Army at Yankee Stadium is a good example of how they're very efficient and they avoid making mistakes. Riley Leonard, 10 of 13 for 148 and 2 touchdowns. Nothing phenomenal, but very effective passer there. 10 of 13 is a really good number. 150 roughly and 2 touchdowns, right? Really solid numbers. That's exactly what we want to see. Riley Leonard is developing into a good passer for this team, but he doesn't have to air the ball out a whole lot because they do have a really good running duo and a really good running quarterback in Leonard himself. 65% comp rate, I think, is a solid number. 1,900 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 4 picks. Really solid for him. A good ratio, in my opinion, at the 14-4. He's been really comfortable and confident in the pocket. Bo Collins transferred over from Clemson. We wondered if he would take that next step, and he has been the best receiver for this team. 34 grabs for 427, 12.6, and 2 scores for him. Averaging about 40 yards per game. Really solid so far this season. Jordan Greathouse has been really good. 339, 13.6, and a touchdown. Mitchell Evans, 213, and 2 scores for him as well. While Jaden Harrison and Jordan Faison have been solid as well, with each getting a receiving touchdown, while Chris Mitchell and Jaden Thomas have a few between the 2 of them as well. I like what they've been able to do. This team's been able to pass the ball effectively. They're not relying on the pass, but they're using it to complement their rushing attack and find good balance. This offense is firing on all cylinders, and they're playing really good football right now.
And now you look at that rushing attack. Leonard, of course, the second leading rusher with 13 touchdowns, 671 yards. Jeremiah Love, a very good running back, 850 and 14 touchdowns for him. Then Jadarian Price has 540 and 6 touchdowns. You're even seeing true freshman Anias Williams getting involved a little bit now that he's fully healthy. None of these guys have too many carries per game, Nick. 11 or less per game for each of those 3 guys at the top. So, these are incredibly fresh runners. Highly efficient ground game, almost 6.3 yards per attempt. They've faced some tough challenges this year, and they've not been phased once. They finally got things going at the end of the game in the opener against Texas A&M. Georgia Tech's a good defense. They had marginal success in that one. Army, they were a top-ranked run defense. Of course, a big size difference, though, allowed them to run all over the Black Knights for almost 10 yards per carry, the most all year long, by the way. 4 straight games of 200-plus. 5 out of the last 6, Nick. This is a rushing attack that is legit. I think they can compete with anybody. USC, of course, has improved run defense, but they don't have a great deal of depth in terms of bodies, and I think this could be a great opportunity for Notre Dame to grind down USC, but it's pretty rare when the Irish top 40 attempts per game as an attack, Nick. They've only did that twice this season. That just shows how much efficiency they have, and it's mind-blowing.
It's a mind-blowing efficiency. 6.3 yards per carry, 3.4 rushing touchdowns per game is a really impressive number. 221 per game is a very strong number. Jeremiah Love has been phenomenal for this team. 857 yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns, 77.3 yards per game rushing. Really good numbers from him. He's also a decent asset out of the backfield as a receiver. Riley Leonard, 671, 6 yards per carry, 13 scores for him. really good numbers, and Jadarian Price is a really solid number 2 back with 77 attempts for 547 yards per carry and 6 scores. So right there, your top 3 rushers all have at least 6 yards per attempt, with double-digit touchdowns for 2 of them and 6 for your number 2 back. Really good numbers. This is a very effective rushing attack that really, they don't attempt throwing the ball a whole lot, but they're just effective and efficient when they do run the ball. I really like what this offense is able to do on the ground. The offensive line has held up very well as well. This is a great rushing attack that looks to be in line for a pretty good game against USC, who, yes, they've improved against the run, and it certainly has been impressive to see some of the transitions the past couple of weeks against UCLA and Nebraska, but overall, this is still a weak-ish rushing attack that Notre Dame can certainly, or rushing defense that is, that Notre Dame can attack and put up a lot of yards and a lot of points very quickly on the ground.
Now we'll glance at the offensive line. Anthony Knapp, the true freshman's getting better weekly at left tackle. It's really still a struggle area in pass protection, but he's been good on the ground. Billy Schrafe was the starter at left guard last week. Sam Pendleton, those played a lot at that position. Pat Coogan, a veteran at center, has been great. Rocco Spindler, he's going to be that starting right guard. He's having an exceptional season. And Emil Wagner, he's been a little shaky in pass protection, but for the most part, a very sound player there. So this is an offensive line that is playing their best football at the right time. Now we move to a USC offense unit that had played all right throughout the year. Miller Moss, though, had a 3-interception game against Washington, and, they'd seen enough. It was time to bench him despite having almost 300 yards per game. This is a guy that just couldn't really elevate the offense like you would envision, Nick, even though he played very good football for a majority of the season. The deficiencies up front, and some of those mistakes led them giving Jaden Maeva the keys to this offense. And, he's clearly watched some Caleb Williams film, because you see some of those nuances and when he's trying to evade and when he's trying to scramble and be mobile in the pocket. And that's something they certainly have needed, because they have struggled up front. He's gotten two rushing touchdowns on the year, 259 yards against Nebraska with 3 scores. Did overcome 2 bad turnovers to win that game. He was able to deliver some impressive plays against UCLA as well. A pretty good defense the Bruins possess. Still only completed 54%, but he was able to make enough plays, Nick, especially with his mobility. And that's something you're going to need here against an Irish front that is incredibly physical. If you want to beat this team, being mobile and being able to make plays on the edge is an area they're going to do that in. Certainly like to see more rushing attempts. Only 9 this year. Notre Dame, they're going to look to drain a lot of clock. Try to beat them at their own game, I would suggest. I think you're going to see his legs involved a lot more in this game, but he'll have to be more efficient through the air as well.
I personally didn't like the move going from Moss to Maeva. I didn't really see the idea. I thought Miller Moss was having a good season, 2,500 yards passing, 65% comp rate, 18 touchdowns and 9 picks. But Lincoln Riley made the move. He pulled the trigger, and they put Maeva in charge, who has been solid so far. He's had a decent 2 appearances for this team, 259 and 3 scores against Nebraska, which was a solid showing in his first start, while 221 and a touchdown against UCLA in a win was good enough to get the job done. Overall, he's been okay in his appearances for this team. 64% comp rate for 546. That is 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. He's also got the ability to run the ball, which I think is certainly key for this offense, is getting him involved potentially to get a few carries here and there. He has 2 rushing touchdowns so far this season as well, which is certainly helping this offense. The move kind of puzzled me, but they wanted to go with that. The team is really solid at running the ball, which is uncharacteristic of Lincoln Riley offense, which I think is certainly helping this offense potentially stay in this game, because Notre Dame's going to run the ball a lot. They're going to rely on those backs that we're going to talk about in a second here to have some production and be involved in the offense.
Now you look at some of these wide receivers they have. It's a very deep group for USC. And you start with Jacoby Lane's probably going to be the leader here. Mekhi Lemon has really emerged, though, over the last month as a big-time playmaker for them. Zachariah Branch, this is a guy that's got a lot of speed and explosiveness. Hasn't been all that effective throughout the year, but he's certainly a threat they're going to have to account for. Deuce Robinson has great hands, 5 touchdowns. You usually find him in the middle. The aforementioned Lane does have 6 touchdowns. And then Woody Marks at running back. We'll get to him, but he does lead the team with 47 receptions. Lake McCree as well at tight end. I mean, this is a lot of different heat you have to account for, Nick. In Notre Dame, this is a team that plays a lot of man coverage. And since Benjamin Morrison went down, their schedule has been pretty weak, or at least in terms of matchups and passing attacks. And, they've played respectable competition. But they have not seen a receiving group like this all year long. There's a lot of opportunities here for USC to attack this secondary that does have these young guys that, again, have not seen talent like this probably in their career.
There's a lot of opportunity here for this USC passing attack to attack a weakened Notre Dame secondary that's played a lot of weak teams through the air over the past couple of weeks. And if you're looking for a reason why that USC could win this game, well, that's certainly a reason. Notre Dame, in their last 4 games, have played 2 service academies that don't throw the ball a whole lot in Army and Navy. They played Florida State, who's been absolutely atrocious this year, and really Brock Glenn in that game had like 1 completion on 10 attempts before getting benched. Not really worth looking at. Then UVA, they didn't have a great game passing in that one either, and they're more of an offense that has some nice rushing balance. So this is an opportunity. If USC is going to win this game, they're going to have to do it through the air, and they're going to have to attack the weaknesses in the secondary that Notre Dame has just by the virtue of not being tested so much this season. I like Mekhi Lemon a lot. 532 for him, 14.4 yards per grab, and 3 scores. He's been solid. Zachariah Branch, still waiting for him to be a little bit more efficient in the red zone. 458 for him, 10.7 and 1 score for him. Kieran Ware-Hudson has been really good for this team, 436 and 3 scores. Jacoby Lane has 6 touchdowns, 372, while Deuce Robinson has 5 touchdowns and 333 as well. Woody Marks gets a nice amount of grabs out of the backfield, leading the team in that regard. Blake McCray is a solid traditional tight end with 243 yards receiving, 10.6 yards per grab, and Kyle Ford has 2 touchdowns as well for this team. This is a really good deep passing attack. Certainly going to want to win this game through the air if you're USC here. Play to your advantages, attack that secondary, and try to see if you can make something happen with your dual threat weapons deep downfield.
Now we look at that rushing attack led by Woody Marks. He's really the only guy that's going to see the ball. Quinn Joyner will get on the field occasionally. He brings a lot of explosiveness to the table, but it's the Marks show. 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. This is a guy that's destined to have a pretty solid outing, you would think. Had 100-plus against Penn State. Had exactly 100 against Michigan. He's faced tough defenses throughout the year. Had 134 against Minnesota, and he's been very successful. This guy is one of the most underrated running backs in the country, and certainly a bit of an outcry from SC fans is to see more of a rushing attack, especially early on in games. And I think you're going to start to see more adequate balance. This is a guy that's going to have a big game, likely Nick, especially with his prowess as a pass catcher as well. The offense runs through Woody, and against Notre Dame, it's going to be no different.
The offense does run through Woody. I like Quentin Joyner. I'm going to say something about him quickly. About 400 yards in the year, 7.5 yards per carry, and 3 scores for him on 53 touches, that is. I like him. I think he's a good number 2 running back. I think he's underrated, having a really solid season, nice explosive speed. Woody Marks, he's been phenomenal. 1,100 yards rushing, 5.7 yards per carry, and 9 scores is a really impressive number. 100 yards per game exactly for him so far this season. He's been really good. He's a solid back out of the backfield as well. You can really do a whole lot with him. I've liked what he's brought to this program since coming over and joining the USC Trojans. I think he's been a really good piece in this offense, and this is something that Lincoln Riley has changed up a little bit, running the ball a lot more often than he did in previous years, adding good balance to his offense. I think that was key to adjusting here. Yes, this team hasn't been able to get the results. They've been in a lot of close games, but they've been able to keep those games close because they have good balance on the ground for once. I like what this rushing attack can do, and I think Woody Marks is a great back with Joyner right behind him. Is not a bad duo at all.
The USC offensive line probably coming off one of their best games of the year against a very good front from UCLA. This is going to be the best front they've probably seen all year, other than the Penn State game. Elijah Page at left tackle, he's been average, but he's also been better. Left guard Emmanuel Pregnon, he's been their best player, I would say. Jonah Monheim, a nice veteran at center. It's certainly going to be big in communication. And, of course, just being physical against the nasty front. At right guard, Alani Noah isn't all that great. And then at right tackle, Mason Murphy as well. So the right side's a bit of a liability. Again, they had a pretty good outing against UCLA. This is a totally different ball game here, Nick. But, Notre Dame doesn't have the greatest of edge presences. It's more so what they bring to the table on the interior. Is SC well-equipped to manage that? Or you think Maeva's going to have to make a lot of plays, kind of like a Caleb Williams would?
I think he is going to have to make quite a few plays here. I do think this offensive line has some decent pieces. I like what they have in the interior. I think it's a good unit, even though a bit younger at some parts. I do think this offensive line is held up, strong enough. I think Maeva is a good improviser as well, and he'll be able to avoid some of that attack from the defensive side of the ball from Notre Dame. I expect the offensive line to have a decent day here. Nothing crazy, but I think they'll be able to hold Maeva and protect him just enough for him to complete some passes or make something happen on the ground.
Moving to that Notre Dame defense. This is a legit unit. I know their schedule certainly would maybe suggest otherwise, but I don't think this defense is bad in any regards. They've only allowed over 350 yards only twice this year. That was to Louisville in a game they won, and then the week 2 loss to NIU. Since then, they've been very good. They played Navy and Army and held those rushing attacks to significantly below average numbers. And obviously, again, the size advantage is a big thing, but you still have to be disciplined. You have to be athletic. You have to have good eye your eyes are going to be tested a lot in those games as well. And Notre Dame's passed those challenges, proving that Marcus Freeman can scheme up a good defense against tough opposition. Because if they weren't good at football, Nick, they would certainly lose regardless of what size advantages they might have. So this defense has bounced back tremendously. Howard Cross didn't play against Army. I'm hopeful he'll play in this one. I think he will. Him and Riley Mills make up a great tandem on the interior. Joshua Burnham has been great at edge. Donovan Heinisch has provided some nice minutes. R.J. Oben has been a good run defender. Bryce Young's been an underrated playmaker as of late. This is a defensive line that's pretty stout, Nick. They're very good against the run. This is a team that, I think that's going to be their biggest edge, is their ability to just be physical and slow down the run. Only giving up 133 yards per game this year. Certainly inflated a little bit by some of those tougher opponents they've played that have a lot of volume. But this is a team that's capable of slowing down the run, but I think that Woody Marks will still probably get his 100.
They still have to be strong against Woody Marks here. I think he will have a good day. This is a defensive line, though, that I do like. There are some solid pieces here. Riley Mills, 33 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks for him on the season. Donovan Heinisch has been solid for this team as well. 28 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. While Howard Cross has been good in the 9 games he's played. 23 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. R.J. Oben, 14 total tackles and a tackle for loss, while Bryce Young has 14 total tackles and 2 tackles for loss as well. This is a good enough defensive line that is going to face a tough test here. I think Woody Marks will certainly test them, but I like what Oben's been able to do as a graduate transfer, been a good leader for this team, and Bryce Young's been an impressive freshman who stepped up coming off the edge there.
The middle of this defense, we've raved about how they've really been improved throughout the year. Jack Kaiser, a veteran playmaker, has been phenomenal against the run, greatly efficient tackler. Drake Bowen, right behind him, despite being significantly younger, has also provided a lot of those qualities. He's even better in coverage, and Jaden Osbury as well. This is a team that's very stout in the front seven. They've not really cracked too much, but SC, Nick, they can test you in a lot of different ways, and we saw Penn State really struggle as well. They had, long rushing touchdown by Joyner of like 60, 70 yards in that game. Linebackers and coverage can certainly be tested by this varying scheme. So even though Freeman's been impressive for the most part this year, the game plan in this one's going to be certainly interesting. And these linebackers, they're not going to be able to take the week off. They're going to have to be incredibly stout. This is a team that also has 29 sacks. Mills leads the way in that category. So it's a, interior heavy pass rush. But it's, 15 different guys that have, at least half a sack this year. So it's a complementary defense, and these linebackers, again, have been very good.
I really like this linebacking core. They're a really good unit that leads the way for this team. Kaiser, 56 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, plus a sack. Good numbers there. Bowen, the sophomore, having a really good season, 51 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack. Jaden Ashbury as well, 45 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss. And then Jalen Sneed, who they move around a little bit, get him involved in the box. They may sometimes put him in the box, 39 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks for him. He's a decent player for this team as well. I like this linebacking core. Solid unit here. They got to be strong in this one. Got to be good against those crossing routes over the middle. Got to be good in the pass rush as well. I like what this unit can do, though. I think they'll have a solid day here.
Going to move to that aforementioned secondary. They have not been tested very much this season. This is a team that's only given up 139.5 yards per game through the air, only allowed 6 touchdowns, 47.5% completion rating, and 15 interceptions. And again, they've had the fortune of playing some pretty rough attacks. Played Florida State, Virginia. They have Malachi Fields. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty easy matchup for them there. Even against Texas A&M early on in the season, they were very good against some relatively talented pass catchers as well. I think that's the biggest concern for Notre Dame. Nick's Christian Gray really had to step up this year. Him and Leonard Moore, they've not seen this challenge all year long. And, Benjamin Morrison, we knew it wouldn't be a major loss throughout the regular season, but in this part of the year, we're about to enter the CFP and you're playing these receivers. It's probably going to be felt a good bit this week, and the depth at corner is not all that great either. So this is going to be a tough matchup. If these guys are struggling, they're not going to be able to come out of the game, and they might lose confidence, and that might lead to even more poor play. A man coverage heavy approach here might be very beneficial for USC.
There are certainly some concerns about this secondary. We talked about that earlier. They have some good pieces, but they aren't tested a whole lot. They're not playing a lot of high-flying offenses like USC can be with Maeva at the helm. Xavier Watts, 40 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 4 picks for him, 8 pass breakups. He's your best coverage asset, really good at safety. Adon Schuler's been solid as well, 35 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 picks, including one of those that he took for a touchdown. Leonard Moore, 30 total tackles, tackle for loss, 2 picks for him. Rod Hurd has been solid at times, 28 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss for him. Jordan Clark's been okay in coverage, plus a pick and 3 pass breakups, 18 total tackles. Luke Tolich as well has a pick, 6 that he returned, and 15 total tackles. Been okay in coverage with a pass breakup as well. The secondary's got to be strong here. They're going to be tested over and over again. USC's going to certainly hit them with that speed that they have. They got to be strong. They got to see if they can win this matchup. Make sure you keep your man at all times. Got to play good man defense here.
Yeah, I was a little hard on those corners, but slot corner Jordan Clark, he is a veteran who's been very great this year. This is certainly not his first, test. Xavier Watts, probably the nation's best safety. He's also been great in coverage. His versatility brought to the table is great. And Rod Hurd, another veteran who's been great against the run. So they do have veterans you can certainly lean on, but at corner, I think that's certainly maybe going to have some vulnerabilities. Now you move to the USC defense, a group that has just been so good in terms of improvement. Against the run last year, they were just getting obliterated by everyone, giving up 300 yards a carry, it seemed. And over the last 4 games, they've held opponents to under 120 yards rushing. They still allowed over 100 in those games, but they're not getting beat up, Nick. The opponent's getting their fair share, and that's about it. Nothing less. Only once this year have they allowed more than 200 yards, and that was Michigan, who really, 60% of their yards were on 3 carries. So this is a much improved run defense. Of course, you start with a guy in Braden Shelby, who is probably the best defensive player on USC. They're currently healthy because they've certainly battled some injuries as well. Gavin Meyer's been a big-time addition at defensive tackle, though. Devin Tompkins, Jamil Muhammad's been pretty underwhelming as a pass rusher. Pretty adequate against the run, though, as has Nate Clifton. And Anthony Lucas was having a great year, Nick. Went down early on in the season. These guys have really rallied since, though. This is going to be a completely different challenge than what they have seen for the last couple of weeks, though. Do you think they're going to be prepared to deal with this test? Because, we talked about Notre Dame and their pass defense. Well, USC and their run defense is in that same category.
This is a good run defense that has a solid unit at, clogging those trenches there. They're solid in the interior. Gavin Meyer, 27 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack for him. Good numbers. Braylon Shelby, 20 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him on the season. Jamil Muhammad's been good as well, 19 total tackles and tackle for loss. Devin Tompkins been solid at getting in the backfield, 18 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Nate Clifton, 17 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, plus a sack. And Kobe Pepe as well has been okay, 15 total tackles for him in a pass breakup. I do think this is a unit that's not bad, but they're facing a very tough task here. They got to be strong against the run. They got to make sure they get good stops on first down. Do not let Notre Dame be on that, at 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3 sort of range, because that's where they thrive in those short down situations on 2nd and 3rd down. That's where they can really hit you. Got to be strong against the run, especially on first down for this run defense.
And of course, you look at the middle of their defense, these linebackers also improved. Eric Gentry was having a great year. He went down. He hasn't returned since, and he's not going to. Easton Mascarenas-Arnold has been just abysmal in coverage. Mason Cobb's much improved this year as a tackler and in coverage, so you're seeing improvements across the board from everybody. And of course, Akil Arnold will play a lot in the box as well, but he's more of a safety than a linebacker. You look to this secondary, and this is where some of the issues still lie, even though there's a lot of added length this year, and the sense of camaraderie is more in this group, kind of like the run defense. So they're still allowing 67% completion rating. That's one of the worst marks in the country. They've only given up 10 touchdowns to 9 picks, 235 yards per game. They were good against the run against Penn State. The reason they lost that game is because they were just leaving guys wide open. Gave up 400 yards in that contest. Penn State, really specifically Tyler Warren, was also making more plays than the secondary was, and that just shows you the weaknesses they can have. They got burned in this 4th quarter against Maryland as well, blowing that lead. Also, so the secondary plays relatively well, Nick. They're facing another good tight end. Certainly not Tyler Warren, but Evans is a guy that can certainly burn you in his own regard. I think that this is going to be an interesting game for SC because, again, I think Notre Dame's pretty talented at receiver. I think they're going to be well endowed when it comes to being able to handle this test. Jalen Smith at corner is having a resurging year. He's been great. John Humphrey, Jacoby Covington, DeCarlos Nicholson. They've added a lot of health at these positions as well. But I think for the most part, they should do well in this game because Notre Dame, they're not going to be airing it out 50 times, Nick. But if they do, they might certainly struggle. And, of course, Kamari Ramsey's having an elite year in coverage. More of a struggle point in run defense for him. You've seen it against Michigan, just poor angles and poor tackling. And that's really what burned them on the ground. Do you think you're going to see similar to that here against the Irish?
I am worried about seeing that. I think the poor tackling, the poor angles are surely going to add up here. I do like, Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, who have been okay this season. Arnold, 88 total tackles for him, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 picks for him. Good numbers there. Mason Cobb, 68 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, which one of those he took for a pick 6. and 3 pass breakups, good in coverage. Akil Arnold, you move him in the box. He's a really good versatile asset, 46 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass breakup. Jalen Smith, 50 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups for him. Kamari Ramsey's been good in coverage, a really solid coverage asset, 45 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 pass breakups for him. Jacoby Covington, when healthy, has been really good, 24 total tackles, a pick, 3 pass breakups. Greedy Vance has been solid as well, 24 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. Carlos Nicholson has been good in coverage, 22 total tackles, 5 pass breakups, while Zion Branch and John Humphrey have 3 pass breakups between the two of them, plus 19 and 17 tackles respectively. This is a good secondary. They're not going to be tested a ton through the air, but they got to be strong. They got to stay focused. Got to be really good in helping that run defense. Got to make sure you clean up tackles. Really cannot get beat down the field, certainly by the tight ends or potentially by these running backs. Got to be strong. Got to have good form in your tackles. Cannot make mistakes tackling against the Notre Dame team. They will just punish you over and over again.
Yep, Greedy Vance, he's been phenomenal in the slot this year. Probably their best corner in terms of consistency, or defensive back, that is. Looking to tail the tape, team comparisons, I think for USC, they get an edge at wide receiver, even though they continue to prize the Irish at that position. Everywhere else, though, got to give it to Notre Dame. I think running backs might be the one concession you could make. USC, I guess they might have a better 1-2 punch. I think Marks is definitely the best running back in this contest. With the efficiencies just off the charts for ND. Everywhere else, they get the nod, especially on the defensive side, Nick. Any issues with this here? The Irish are really towering over the Trojans in terms of roster talent.
Yeah, I think running back, I'm going to make the case for Woody Marks or Quentin Joyner. I think those two together are a really good 1-2 punch. I would give running back to USC, but outside of that, I think this is a fair tail of tape. This makes a lot of sense to me. I think this is a Notre Dame team that's 10-1 for a reason. They're really good on paper. They're really dominant. They're playing great football this time of year, and they really do have a lot of advantages against this USC Trojans team.
Now I move to the final thoughts on the prediction. Keys to the game for the Irish, just continue to overwhelm with being physical, play mistake-free ball. USC got to be aggressive in attacking this man coverage, must convert in the red zone. And, of course, getting stops on 4th down has been a real problem for this defense. That's why they're in this hole, and they should, quite frankly, be undefeated. No prediction for me as an SC fan. Lopsided score here from Nick. And I think Notre Dame's a great team. I wouldn't be mad if this team won one bit, even as a rival, because I would really like to see what they can accomplish against top-tier competition in the playoffs. For USC, though, this is a game week where I felt the same way going into the Penn State game. I was like, this is a tough opponent we're facing, a top 5 team, but I'm not worried about it. I think we're going to play a great game and potentially even win, and I feel that same way this weekend. SC, they've not been blown out in any games this year. They, again, should have probably won more than half the games they've lost, just not being able to get over the hump. I think Omaev at quarterback, it certainly is a bit of an added dimension here. And I really think these Irish corners are going to struggle against the Trojan wide receivers. Will they have enough to slow down the rushing attack, though? Likely not. Will Woody Marks be able to spring free as many explosive runs? Maybe not, but it's also a complex scheme as well. So I think USC, this is going to be a very closely contested contest, and it'd be a major win for the Trojans. But, Nick, you're going to stick with the Irish, and I think that's probably the safe bet here, because it really is a good team that's pretty complete.
I'm going to take the hot team here. I'm going to take the Irish. They're playing really good football right now, moving to 10-1, and really have their sights set on hosting a playoff game in the first round of the college football playoff. I got this score exactly right in this game 2 years ago. It was pretty close last year as well. I feel like I have a good read on these two teams in this matchup here. I like what Notre Dame can do. I think they're going to win this game. No disrespect to USC. I think they're a good offense. I think Maeva is a really good player. I like the defense has been able to turn around this year. I just think Notre Dame's the hot team right now. They're playing with a lot of momentum and energy. They have a lot riding on this game. There really is a lot going for them. They've looked really good. They put up a boatload of points in their recent games, 49, 35, 52, 51, and 31. They've been very effective. They've been scoring a ton of points. This is a very efficient offense with a really good defense. Certainly USC can make this a game by attacking the man coverage, by really putting a lot of a stress on that secondary, particularly the corners and some of the safeties for Notre Dame. I think that's a big key to success if you're a USC fan. I think they can keep it close early on, but ultimately Notre Dame will pull away, get this job done, win by 2 touchdowns, and continue to build towards a spot in the college football playoff. This is a big opportunity for Notre Dame to continue to prove your point and really make the committee and make the rest of college football remember that loss against NIU was really just a fluke. This team deserves to host a playoff game, assuming they win this game. I think they will. They're a really talented team that's heading towards the right direction. Good offense, good defense, a great team overall. I'm going to take the Fighting Irish in this one in a rivalry matchup going on in LA.
For today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me. This should be a good one going on CBS 3:30. Any final thoughts from this one from Los Angeles?
Looking forward to watching this one on CBS 3:30. I think it's a good matchup, really solid in that mid-afternoon slate on Saturday.